Good thing. Call this meeting to order. It's a committee of the whole, August 8th. Roll call. All councilors are present except Councilor Watson, Councilor Perizzotti, and Councilor Barber. And I think Councilor Barber is on her way. Say that. Anybody have any calendar and/or communications? Fabulous. So I'd like to move the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? That passes 6 to 0 to 0? 7 to 0 to 0?
Yes, passes.
7 to 0 to 0. Any unfinished business? I did receive a call from a citizen regarding the lack of a noise ordinance, and wanted to know why there isn't one, and he had some situations that I can talk to John about and to the chief about with regards to noise, and wanting to see what options he had and if we were interested in any kind of noise ordinance. The first item is 2017-0005 pending litigation, which is a 2017 standing referral, and we have attorney.
I just have one thing.
Oh yeah.
From unfinished. When I had my golf tournament Friday, they were asking at the golf course, who was it that said they were going to take care of trying to get the exterior fixed on the council, and I couldn't remember who it was. One of us said that they'd push to get some work.
So par 4 was asking, or
Yeah,
the golf course
the
was
golf
asking?
course.
Oh, I don't recall. Let's
I
go back
thought
and
maybe
watch
it
the
was
videotape.
Karen. It's like
I know I agreed that they definitely needed to do
Yeah,
work.
I couldn't remember, so anyway, maybe we can put a little
Okay.
referral through to
Yeah,
do something about that.
Absolutely.
the front of the.
So did you make that referral, or?
Yes, we certainly can talk about it. Yes.
By the front, you mean the back, which is the front. That's the issue, right? That the back of the building is really the front.
The front.
The front of the building.
We're talking about where
streetwise.
the door and the
Railing.
Yeah.
and the step in.
How about just the entire exterior?
About we wait and see what the state's going to do.
And they did put new carpet and paint.
Great.
So, and it looks
Fabulous
Okay.
place. Par 4.
Very good.
So that first item is 2017-0005, pending litigation, and we have Attorney Callahan here, and Cindy and Mary, and we're here to talk about Oddfellows. And so I think you gave me most of your motion. I hereby move that the members of the Town Council Committee of the Whole, Town Manager John Bird, Tax Assessor Mary Gardner, Finance Director Cindy Landry, and Town Attorney Eric Callahan go into executive session pursuant to General Statute Section 1-200, parentheses 6, parentheses B, for the purpose of discussing strategy and negotiations related to pending litigation and/or pending claims concerning the tax appeal filed by Oddfellows Home of Connecticut Inc. doing business as Fairview. At the appropriate time, the attorneys for Oddfellows Home of Connecticut, Elliot Kamen and James Roseman, will also be invited into executive session. So moved.
Second.
The motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? That passes 7 to 0 to 0. And going. All right, we're back from executive session, and we're moving on to 2017-0190, Police Department update, and we have the Chief of Police here. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for hanging around.
I was wondering if you were still raring to go, so.
We
We're
are.
ready to go.
Oh, yeah, world
Especially
fast.
if you have good news for us.
All right, well, I just got a few updates, and I'll try to move through them rather quickly, but first, which I took the liberty of just putting a list together for myself that I shared with you. We have received all of our body cameras. In fact, I've got a little show and tell. I have one here. Each one of our officers will be issued these body cameras. The good thing is we don't have to modify their uniforms. They're a couple of different mounting features, but it's not running. right now.
Those are.
But,
Yeah, but those aren't.
those are.
Can you hang it from your tie?
These are the Axon body camera. We recently entered into an agreement with them. They delivered it within the parameters set forth by the grant that we applied for. Since that time, we did submit our packet. We've been in contact with the Office of Policy and Management. The grant manager indicated our packet has moved forward. They do them in bulk, so other departments have also submitted those packages. It's bonded money through the bond commission, the state bond commission. So that should be forthcoming in a number of months. There's been some concerns, obviously, with the state budget and where it sits, but we've gotten assurances that ours has been submitted, and we have all indications that that money is going to be forthcoming in the future. But our officers are not outfitted with them yet. My hope was to have them fielded by September 1st. Probably will be later on in September, and that's due to the fact that the company Axon, we had to schedule training, train-the-trainer training for a select number of our officers and supervisors, and then they'll get fielded out. We've also been working on a policy which is in compliance with the state mandated policy to accept the grant. A couple of minor changes to it. We've discussed them with the collective bargaining unit. So that's still in draft stages, but they should be out on the road in a number of probably 6 to 8 weeks. So mid-September we do have the scheduled training, so you should see that out there. On that note, so I'd be happy to answer any questions on this, but it kind of dovetails nicely into the second topic I put on that list.
I just wonder if your officers are looking forward to this.
I think they're, I don't know if looking forward is the right word. Like any change, you know, there's certainly some questions and concerns, and the reason why I've tried to be straightforward and get the union in with the policies so they understand what the parameters are. And I think some of the officers probably have some concerns, just to, you know, it's different. But as I said to this body some time ago, is that we're looking for transparency. The public is expecting that. This is one tool that will help that, but I think the vast majority of cases that this will support the actions of our officers and will reduce the number of complaints, add additional information for prosecution later on, and I think eventually it will become the norm universally, and I think they'll be much more comfortable. But like anything, you know, a new piece of equipment always has some questions with it. This is no different. But from what I've heard from my counterparts and many other officers here in Connecticut and outside of Connecticut, once they've gone to their body cameras, even though they may have had some concerns at the outset, after they've had them for a little while, they wouldn't live without them.
Good.
So.
Do they have to unload the cameras after each shift?
Yeah, what'll happen, there's a 64 gigabytes of memory in here, so it can store a lot depending on how much you record during a given shift, so it could go longer than that. But really we're IT actually, and I don't know if Brian's here, their folks have been doing a lot of work in the department to get these operational. We're going to have them mounted in a certain area, so at the end of the shift they'd put it in the docking station. It would upload everything to our cloud storage, and take the information off of this. And there's procedures that we have to go through as far as redaction and what needs to be saved, what doesn't need to be saved. But there's sufficient storage for a 12-hour shift on that. So, any other questions? Or so this again, it's in the department. We have them. We did receive them within the time frames of the grant, and should be fielding them shortly.
Great.
So thank you for supporting the grant application that we did put forward, and you'll see our officers with them on their persons shortly. The second bullet on here kind of speaks to this. Earlier today I attended a hearing up at the state legislature. There's a task force that was established to look at police training curriculum, and the bulk of the conversation today talked about expectations of police and transparency. This was one of the topics there. Some of the efforts that we currently have underway in the department, I think, fit nicely into that, and also look at what was recommended a couple of years ago under the President's Task Force of 21st Century Policing. Transparency, updating policies, making sure that departments are meeting minimum standards. And one of those things that we're going forward with right now is a total revamp of our policies within the department. It's a project that has been hanging out there for some time. Myself, Some other members of the command staff have done a lot of work trying to update policies, but we are utilizing another firm, some subject matter expert here in Connecticut, to help vet those policies and go through. We've already updated many of them, and my goal is at the end of the day to have an entirely new policy manual within the next 12 months. I think our officers will benefit from that because we're going to institute best practices, and it's also, not that we don't have them now, but it will codify some of the practices that are already underway, but really set the stage for us to become an accredited department. That was part of the discussion today with that task force meeting that I attended. We have entered into an agreement with the Police Officer Standards and Training Council, the state governing body for police officers police officer certification. They have a program for accreditation. We have agreed to comply with that. So one of the first building blocks on that is the policy work that we're doing right now. So that's kind of the foundation that we'll build the rest of it on. I've identified or designated Deputy Chief Gately to be our accreditation manager. I can say with a high degree of certainty, and I think that the officers in the department will agree with this, he is passionate about it. In fact, many of the conversations we have with officers, he backs it up with some of the work that has been going forward with our policy updates and how to get us to accreditation. And the reason I put that second bullet on here was to mention the fact that the discussion that was had today really did talk about mandating departments in Connecticut to become accredited. While there's no, and I spoke at that meeting too, while there's no real cost to do state accreditation, meaning we don't have to pay a fee for the accreditation status, what it does require is there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. Some of the stuff we've already been working on internally, minor facility issues, making sure that we're in compliance with best practices out there in the law enforcement community for handling prisoners and how we do procedures internally. But we're working a lot, and I think that the policy updates that we're doing right now will set the stage for success with that. My goal is to have that done within the next 12 to 18 months. So we're moving forward. We've been working on that. But some of the other items I put on this list, I think, play a role in that as well.
Hey, Chief, with regards to the accreditation, that's the city is accredited.
The city is,
the same thing that you're looking for?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. There's two types of accreditation benchmarks. There's the state accreditation. Post is the governing body for that. There's also COLIA, the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. I came from a department that was accredited under COLIA. That is, there's some of the same standards, some overlapping standards, but COLIA, again, is a national accreditation. There is some cost associated with that if we eventually wanted to go in that direction. My goal right now is to set the bar at the state accreditation and move from there.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if there's any questions on those topics, but next I'm just pretty proud of the work that our officers have been doing really for the last year and a half with the task force that was established. But I'm sure many of you have seen in the press recently our officers, particularly our narcotics investigators, have made some substantial arrests here in the town of Groton. They've worked with others. I know I came before you to talk about the agreement we had for the regional task force. Recent weeks, the bulk of that work is really centered here on some drug dealers in the town of Groton. And I will say this in front of you, I'd say it publicly. We're trying to make the town of Groton as unpalatable and unfavorable for any of the criminal element that would choose to sell drugs, particularly those that would harm the citizens here. I'm, again, proud of the work that our narcotics officers, detectives, patrol officers, and investigators have done out there with that. And we've seen some substantial seizures. So I know that that's been probably something you've noticed in the press. I hope you've noticed it. And I just think publicly I need to commend them for a job well done. Our officers do a great job every day in all of their activities. But this is one I just wanted to highlight for you. Yes, ma'am.
What's the CE stand for the regional?
Community enhancement.
Okay.
This organization isn't really just for narcotics. It's really to look at community problems and try and identify them to make sure that we're looking at things and targeting things that are important to us, not necessarily just criminal, but quality of life type issues. And we've done that in other venues, looked at some other activities that have taken place in town. High crime areas, try to put people there, but also look at some other quality of life issues, curb the influx of things that maybe aren't as good for the community as we would like them to be. Try and target that stuff. But the bulk of their work recently, because of what we know is going on in Groton and in society as a whole, is really the opioid epidemic and trying to target that stuff and work to do what we can through enforcement and getting people help that they need.
Great.
I also wanted to make you aware, we've been working with the town of Ledyard Police Department as well as the town of Stonington. Last year we had several fatal accidents in town, probably more than we've had in the recent past. There's a lot of things that can contribute to that, but what we've decided to do, which I think is in our best interest and with our partner agencies that surround the town of Groton, is to work at developing a reconstruction squad. There's a lot of talents out there, but there's also a lot of training involved in getting someone that level of expertise to conduct a thorough fatal accident investigation. There's schools that we send people to down in Florida, the Institute of Police Technology and Management. Sometimes they're hosted locally. So it seems to make sense that since they're not a daily occurrence, getting a couple of officers from each department that really are skillful in this, that have a lot of experience to work collaboratively. Last year we were able to, through mutual aid, get assistance from Ledyard Police Department at a pretty significant fatal accident we have. As you may recall, a young girl died in a traffic accident here in town. One of their reconstructionists came out to assist. So what we're looking to do is set up a core group from each of the departments that if there is a fatal accident, we can help one another, but also do some peer evaluation of accident investigations to make sure we're putting something before the court, if it's going to come to a criminal prosecution, that we've put a good set of eyes, a couple of sets of eyes on it, and we work collaboratively, because a lot of the problems that we're having here in Groton are the same problems Ledyard and Stonington are having. Just given the fact that some of these happen on the border of the towns, we're seeing a lot of benefit from that. And instead of sending a whole bunch of people from one department to get that training, we're able to take several officers from different departments and kind of share the costs and really enhance the efforts of the group as a whole. So that's one other thing that we're having some pretty good success at. And they're meeting regularly too, to just kind of go over some training and protocols. Also wanted to update you, we are in the midst of transitioning to a new firearm. I know last year during the budget process we had talked about firearms, and we were able to leverage some of working with the previous town manager, leverage some funding that we left over at the end of the year last year, but also by trading in our current firearms as well as some other weapon systems that we have that we no longer use in the department. We're able to do that in a cost-effective way. But right now the officers every one of the departments transitioning from a 40 caliber Glock handgun to a 45 caliber Sig Sauer. So that's undergoing now. And the last two things I saved, I think, are really probably items that I'm looking for assistance with and to keep you apprised of, because they are significant issues to the department. And there is a significant cost associated to these. So I thought it would be wise to advise you, but also to advise the RTM of some things that may be coming up in the future that we would need support and quite frankly, would need some financial backing to accomplish. The first, which I think is the most critical issue, is our radio system. If you recall, in 2015 and 2016, there were some discussions about maybe getting other agencies onto our radio system, a common dispatch system and the like. We were given, or the town set up a capital improvement project to look at that and examine that. After I came on as chief, we were able to take that money, and through the authorization by the council, we were able to take that original $100,000 and buy equipment. Some of the equipment that we bought were portable radios. This is one of them, to replace radios that are still in our inventory and used by many officers, which are over 20 years old, like this one here. We also made some modest improvements to some antenna sites around the town, but we've done a wholesale analysis of our radio system, and it is in need of repair, it is in need of enhancements, and that is not an inexpensive proposition. So we've met with our current vendor that we use for radio service to look at our system. They have given me a report. I've shared it with the town manager. We've had some discussions, but it is something that is important to our officers. There are some areas that are not optimal when it comes to radio communications, and we need to start looking at the future and have a plan for the next several years in order to make some improvements to that. This isn't a matter of a nice to have type of thing. This is a necessity for the department. And when our radio system was put in roughly 30 years ago, it was state of the art. But like everything, there's a lifespan, and you need to maintain it. We're at that point now where we need to make some decisions as to what we need to do in order to either lengthen that lifespan or to look at potentially replacing it in the not-too-distant future. Again, that's something that I would solicit your assistance in. I'm not giving you all the information because I'm sure the questions would be, how much is it going to cost? You know, this is an expensive proposition. It's hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. We've looked at other opportunities too, partnering with some of the other communities I mentioned that surround us. Also looking at radio systems that are established in other communities in southeastern Connecticut. But what my goal is to have something that's best for us, but most cost effective for this community, and enable us to do things that may be of interest to the town as a whole, working with other departments to be on the same network, same system. But that is something that we definitely need to look at. The CIP that originally funded the purchase of these radios, and by the way, not every officer was outfitted with a new radio. We had enough money to buy about a quarter of the department new radios. We've tried to buy them incrementally since then, but many of our officers still carry the older technology. Frankly, that the radio, this older radio, is no longer manufactured. In fact, we can no longer repair it. So when they die, we replace it. But it doesn't matter what I've learned. I've been a cop for a long time, and what I'm concerned about is picking up the radio and keying the mic and the other person at the other end of it hearing me. I don't really didn't put a lot of thought into how that happens. But really, it doesn't matter how good this is. This is a good radio. This one here in my hand, I can talk to everyone in the department, but I can also talk to Groton City, Stonington, Ledyard, across the river to New London and Waterford. It has additional capabilities. But no matter how good this is, if our backbone doesn't support that, this isn't going to do it isn't going to do a better job. The backbone is what we really need to work on and need to improve. And just getting initial cost estimates of what would get us to where I think we should be in the next year, 2 years. It is a sizable chunk of money.
Chief, can the backbone be done in phases?
It can, but there's economy of scale. I mean, it depends on what we do. For instance, if we went to a system where we looked at simulcasting, broadcasting from several locations at the same time, it'd be a much better system for us. But yet, if we only did that, we'd have to pay, let's say, X amount, $10,000 for a round figure to do it from one site, and maybe $10,000 from another. If we did it together, it would probably cost us somewhere in between. Instead of $20,000, it may cost us $15,000 or a little bit less than that. So, doing certain things at certain points in time would be more economical, if that makes any sense. And that's the discussion we've had with our current vendor. We also recognize the fact that this technology is going to be outdated soon. Just like the cell phones. I mean, every time I go back to the Sprint store, they give me a new phone because the other one's not supported anymore. So I don't want to look at the next 30 years because I think in 5 to 10 years our technology is going to advance so much that maybe we're getting away from this type of stuff into into a device that's multifaceted. So I don't want to dedicate money to something in the future that we may not need, but look at what we need, at least for the, not really the short term, but the intermediate term. Does that answer that question? I just think it's important to emphasize this is an important issue to our officers. One thing I'm always cognizant of is their safety and making sure they have equipment and tools that make them do their job as safely as possible. I don't want to paint a rosy picture. I don't want to paint, a terrible picture either, but we need to do something. And I understand right now we're dealing with a tough financial climate, but it is something I need to bring to your attention because we are going to need to do it.
Karen?
Chief, if with the radio system that we have now, is there still a problem with areas where you don't, in other words, the officer in the car can't communicate directly to the desk officer in the station?
There are some dead spots. Any system has a certain degree of dead spots, and it's depending on which type of radio you use. There's a lot less power coming out of this than it would come out of our mobile units in a cruiser. There are some areas, we've done a wholesale analysis of the town where there's some, through the companies that we've worked with in the past several years, we've looked at where those are to try and make some enhancements. But there's strategies that they can use, leveraging technology to cover some of those areas where maybe coverage isn't as good as we'd like. But yeah, there are. There always will be a certain degree of locations that are not as optimal as others. And New England, town there's hills and valleys, and that doesn't, flat line or flat ground is much more conducive to radio transmissions than areas where you'd have voids.
So this is a officer safety issue as well, then?
Could be, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Diane?
You know what I'm gonna ask? We change this over, will it help us to try to get the dispatch with the city and you combined?
I think it would be one of those things that would, right now it's something that would prevent it. So eliminating that. Right now, the situation we have right now doesn't lend itself to doing that in the best way.
Right.
If we make these improvements, it would make it easier to do that, sure.
So we would make sure that we are compatible with what they use?
Yeah, the city's on an entirely different radio system. They're on low band.
Yep.
We're on 800 megahertz, a high band system. So they're speaking at different levels.
Frequencies.
And as I pointed out to you before, this radio, and we've only got a handful of these in the department for some of the supervisors. These do have the capability to talk on multiple bands.
Okay.
I will tell you that to buy one of these radios is significantly more than buying a radio that only talks on our band. So that's why we've kind of given these to people to, at the supervisory level, and in my thought process in doing that was it kind of met the spirit and intent of what the council wanted in the first place, was the ability to speak with the city, but more so we can now speak with other departments in our area. I think it would help facilitate that should that decision come to pass where, dispatch and everything is consolidated in one location in town. It would help with that. In my discussions with the previous city chief, I mean, they're not looking to spend a lot of money. So I think they would look for this to be a project that we took over and we funded it in order to facilitate that happening.
Well,
but I don't want to speak for the
It
current
appears
chief
what
of the
you're
city.
saying, though, is that we need to change anyway,
Well,
because ours is so archaic.
Well, we need to improve the radio system we have.
Right.
We need to invest in it, yes. Regardless of any other entities, the system we have now needs enhancements, needs some improvements.
Well, it's a step in the right direction, too, for enhancing what we're looking at, so.
Rich?
Thanks.
Yeah, Chief, did I hear you right? You're going to a 45 caliber?
Yes, yes.
Is that, do other police departments use a
Yep,
45?
yep. There's changes over time, for, in the 80s, the 9mm was the way everybody was going, from revolvers to automatics. 40 caliber became the new norm. There's some reasons and there's some studies that are out there now indicating that maybe 40 caliber, which is really a kind of a beefed up 9mm round. A lot of departments are going to, believe it or not, back to 45 or back to 9mm to 45. 40 caliber, I don't want to say it's fallen out of favor, but there's studies that have been done by the FBI and some other entities. But you know, the state police has 45 calibers. Stonington Police Department has 45 calibers. There's advantages and
That's a
disadvantages.
stopping bullet.
Well, it's a lower velocity round than the 40 caliber. 40 caliber round is a high velocity round, and if you recall, I think I came here and explained some of the dynamics that caused some chamber pressures that created faults in our older firearms.
Did you ever get your shooting range fixed?
It's in the process now.
Okay.
That was a capital improvement project that Public Works has been working on. They did post the bids. I believe that should be starting in the fall. So the first phase of that, the second phase of it, I think was tabled under the CIP, but the first phase of it, yes.
Okay.
It hasn't happened yet, but it is in the works. And the last thing, and this does speak to something else, we've been meeting, and I briefed the town manager on this, but we have two different systems within the building as far as records management, which are the report system, the ability of our officers to write the police reports that they do, traffic accidents, criminal cases, and managing that system for us as the police department leaders to identify where problem areas are, do crime mapping, things of that nature. We have a system, but also there is a separate and distinct computer-aided dispatch system. So to best explain it, if someone calls 911 or wants to report a problem and it goes into the dispatch center, you know, they generate a call at the dispatch center and they will dispatch officers to it. And that goes into the CAD system. You know, it says go to 123 Main Street for this type of call. In some systems where they're fully integrated, it will push that information to the records management system to populate both. We don't have that now, and we've been working with the dispatch center to see if there's ways to do it with the two different systems that we have, the two different vendors. We've come to the realization that that cannot happen through whatever reason. You know, this company doesn't want to provide their technology to that company. It just won't happen. So as part of the client first, this was discussed at length, trying to get a system that works for both sides. Also, understanding that the dispatch center has other customers in the fire service and ambulance service, but trying to get something that would work for both sides. We're moving, we're looking at things. We have looked at a system a couple times in the past, and myself and the town manager, Director Sastry, and a couple of others are going to be taking a trip down to a company in East Haven on Friday to look at a system that claims they can do it for everybody. So we're taking a good hard look at that. This is an important thing. You know, priority-wise, you know, the radios are certainly at the top, but this is a close second. And it was identified through the Client First project to come to some kind of resolution on this, to get those systems connected. It does create an exorbitant amount of work on our officers' parts to try and put information in one system and then put it in another system and when they don't collaborate. So our hope is that we'll be able to find some kind of solution in the near future to bring those two together. You know, to speak to your question, Councilor Barber, earlier, would this help with other things? Well, right now we don't have that connectivity between the two. The city does not have that existing problem. They do have a system that connects with both. So that would be one of those things that we've discussed in the past that we would need to.
Is that the system you're looking at?
We are
The
looking
same
at
as what the city's using?
No, the system that they have is a different system. The system they have is a system that we use for our records management. They use both functions of it. The system that we're looking at Friday is an entirely new system, different system.
One of the challenges with our usage and the city usage is the city doesn't have fire.
Right.
Where our dispatch is doing both, and the system has changed a little bit to be able to handle both. So that's one of the challenges that we face that the city doesn't face, so.
Correct.
So if we like talk to the city to try to, you know, buy licenses or whatever and use their software in the town, it would still pose a problem for the fire departments and the fire dispatch because they're not as compatible. That's true, right?
Yeah, and there's certainly things that the fire department needs that are important to them, that you know, functionality within a dispatch system that are important to them, and network with some of the software that they use in the fire service. This is a critical thing for us because we have, just like the fire service, we have a lot of reports. In fact, today we had auditors at the police department to look at some of the information that we use through you know, state and national systems for criminal database checks. We have to provide reports. The public is constantly coming to us for police reports. If someone's a victim of a crime, they want to get a copy of that. So getting that information for us is key. And hopefully it will enable us to do some things that we haven't been able to do in the past, which is get into e-ticketing, e-citation, which, you know, as you know, a couple of years ago, we had some challenges here in the town when the first racial profiling report came out. And I will tell you from my analysis, some of that report, some of the problem with that is bad data that we provided. And again, it's because there's two systems where you look at how many traffic stops did you get in the last week, and one system says 30 and the other one says 28. Where are those two going? So trying to establish that connectivity would be a huge asset to the department.
Karen?
One other question, Chief. Have we had any problems with carbon monoxide buildup in cruisers? I've been reading a lot about the problems that some of the departments are having, and I just saw something on TV this afternoon that Ford came out and said now they think it may be due to structural stress cracks in the manifold, whatever that means. So
I've for the last 2 weeks been talking pretty regularly with Bob Charette and people at the town garage. I'm glad to tell you we've kind of been out in front of this a little bit. They had a vehicle where there were some questions. They were able to do some testing, and this goes back several months ago. But we've gotten those reports. We've got them from the company. We've got them from Ford, as well as the company that works on our vehicles. Their initial assessment was a lot of this could have been done by aftermarket products being put in, because when you install equipment in a police cruiser, you're drilling holes, you're putting cages in, you're routing wires, putting in lights. They did a pretty thorough inspection, and they're continuing to do that. As cars come in, they take a look at them, but we've gone so far as we're ordered, we haven't received them yet, some carbon monoxide detectors to go inside the cruisers. In fact, I sent an update out to the department yesterday outlining that, saying, hey, you know, although we're not aware of any problems with our vehicles, the potential does exist because of what we've seen. So to be proactive, we've bought these detectors, which are a low-cost item, to affix to the interior of a cruiser, so that an officer sees the changing of colors, that they would know that there's a problem. But I have talked at length with Bob Charette, and he has his mechanics that work on our vehicles and service them, looking at that stuff, trying to identify if there are any problems. And in a separate conversation with him, he did go to our installer that's been outfitting our cars recently, and he commented to me that the good news is they take everything out of the car. Instead of drilling holes, they route the wires under the carpet, so they pull the carpets out, they pull the seats out. So that should limit the exposure, but we're aware of the problem. Have read the reports from Austin, Texas, Auburn, Mass, some other locations, so we're trying to stay on top of it. And this afternoon I got a report from the company that we purchase the vehicles through that had a little update, pretty similar to what you're saying now. So we are aware of it, and we're trying to be proactive in preventing any problems.
Bonnie?
Have you met the new city chief?
I have. I've known the new city chief for 20
Okay.
some
But have
odd
you met
years.
with, have you met with
I
him
was
since?
at his swearing in last night, yes,
Okay.
congratulated him, talked to him for a while. He's a good man. I think it'll be a good relationship. I'm sure it'll be a good relationship.
Great, that's great.
Rich?
No, it's a-
Yeah, that's it. All right, Chief.
Thanks, chief.
We appreciate the update.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Hope we have more of that, right?
Sorry we kept you waiting.
That's- Have a good evening.
You too, thank you.
Thank you.
Next is 2017-0192, the Enterprise Information Management System Update. So we have an IT update because that's the biggest plan going right now. We have Brian and Nikki to provide that update.
Hello.
Hello.
I think John has an update that he's going to distribute, or you guys have it? Great.
Got it.
Do you want us to just dive in?
Sure.
Okay. I wasn't sure if there's any information in particular you were looking for, so this is just kind of a broad overview of where we are. As you know, we had the 2 qualified responses, or 2 vendors. Right now, we're focusing pretty much on working with just the one to do our due diligence, because our second vendor was really not able to meet quite a few of the town's needs without actually bringing in third-party vendors, which would significantly drive up the cost of the project. So that's why right now we're just focusing on the one vendor to do our due diligence. That vendor was on site at the end of May, doing demonstrations on most of the modules for finance, people management, land management, work orders, and assets. Many people throughout the organization attended those sessions and evaluated the demos, and then specifically noted whatever additional questions they had or other things that they would like to see demonstrated. That information was reviewed and compiled by Client First, our consultant. During June, all of the module teams, with the exception of finance, met to, again, go over that information and identify any of the peculiarities, the things that we do different that they might want to see demoed specifically by the vendor. Finance was not able to meet during that time. As you know, they've had significant turnover in their key personnel. It's a very difficult time for them. It was the end of the fiscal year. So they really have not been able to pull together as a team to do some of this work. Since we're starting with the finance module and our needs in that area are pretty complex, we really need them to be able to take the time and spend the time they need to identify the things that they need to see from the vendor. There's also a number of pre-implementation tasks that, again, throughout the organization, people are looking at. Finance, for example, has some major decisions to make about things as basic as our chart of accounts, okay, before we can move forward with any kind of implementation. One of the pre-implementation tasks that another group is working on is addressing in the town of Groton, again, because of the different entities, the city, Groton Long Point, Noank, E911, the assessor system. We have a lot of different places that require us really to have a master address database. And so we are looking at changing our business procedures to an industry standard, which is really to generate those addresses out of our GIS system and push them to the various entities. It'll help clean up and make our process more efficient, get the information out to people in a timelier manner. But again, it's a business process change. So there's a group of us that are meeting monthly to really talk through what are those procedures going to be. Other initiatives that you've heard about under the umbrella of the ERP is the legislative agenda management. We have had difficulties with our vendor, Provox. They have not been as responsive in this project as we all would have hoped and thought they would be. So it's really been a struggle to get them to set up what we need as a test database so that we can actually do the appropriate training. but I'm in nearly daily contact with them, trying to stay on top of them and to make sure that they're giving us our deliverables. But that's also unfortunately held up not only our training in-house, but our ability to provide you with the types of electronic packets that we talked about before, the kind that you can annotate, that you can look at on any type of device. So there has been a delay there, but we are working on it. You know, along that line, because the town manager had mentioned that you guys would like to really move forward with the electronic packets. So one of the changes that Brian recently made on his end was moving our email service to the cloud, and that's actually opened up a lot of capability for us to be able to send you much larger documents. Under our old system, I couldn't send you an entire agenda packet. So hopefully you've noticed that in your email now you are receiving the full agenda packet in a PDF form. It's not indexed and you can't annotate it, but it is at least a PDF. It is at least an electronic. So if you wanted to move forward with that kind of a simplified PDF, we are now in a position to do that once we have a discussion about what types of devices you would like to use. But the agenda.net implementation is going to take a little longer than we expected. Client First recently delivered to us the public safety IT master plan. And this is the master plan that was done specifically for the police department and dispatch. It identified a number of initiatives, two of which the chief referenced in his presentation to you earlier. But there are actually, I would say, 40 or 50 initiatives in there. It's a pretty comprehensive document. At this point, I've turned it over to the town manager for his review, and we're just waiting kind of to find out what our next steps are going to be with that document. Typically what would happen is we would send it out to the police department, to dispatch, have them review the document, make sure that it's complete, make sure that all the initiatives were identified, and then we would begin to roll those initiatives into our overall master plan, which includes the information management system, the legislative management, all of those other initiatives that we identified 2 years ago. I've actually started to do that, at least on paper, to put together an overall plan to look at the bottom numbers for everything that the organization has identified. I will tell you, it is staggering. The IT steering committee, which is our, we meet monthly again to talk about what the initiatives are in the organization. We're going to be meeting again on August 23rd, and we're going to start looking at that overall plan that's been put together and making our recommendation to the town manager for what we should go forward with or what we would recommend for the FYE 2019 budget. Again, looking forward to the capital improvement program. Capital improvement projects are identified first, and then in the operating budget later on.
Diane?
I'm concerned about you not getting the support after spending money with Provox.
I'm concerned as well.
There's got to be a way to put their feet to the fire. Do you have any way to back out of it if you wanted to, because you're not getting the support?
I would have to probably have that discussion with the purchasing agent. I don't believe we're at that point yet. I'm still confident that the product is the best product we can go with. Right. I'm hopeful that we will get more support. I've just had to be increasingly assertive with them about what our needs are. But well, I think we're on track now.
Well, they've got you behind schedule, though.
Yes.
So I think there's some harsh words that have to be spoken to. No?
I've been harsh.
Okay. But this is unacceptable. If you're paying them good money for the product, they need to stand behind their product.
I agree
And
with
I
you.
just,
I agree with you.
it's unfortunate. You said you had 2 and you were gonna go with 1?
No, different project.
Okay.
Different project.
Rich?
Yeah, Brian, are you gonna go with the chief and the town manager on Friday?
Yes.
Okay.
Town manager did invite me.
Okay.
So with regards to the tablets and the paperless, what I gathered from what you were saying was the software or the app that we would use, we don't have.
Correct.
But we do have an email system that will send a PDF. Can't we just buy a PDF or upgrade the PDF so that there is capability to write on the note or make notes and just hold them on our tablet? Like I've seen Adobe where, I think it's PDF, where you can actually type on a document and just put a note on there or whatever and leave it on there. Is that,
I guess we could explore the costs associated with that.
Guess we could, yeah.
I mean, I think
It's an annual
it's,
subscription. Adobe's changed their licensing format to
Yeah.
an annual subscription.
I mean, I don't know, we've talked about it for a while, so, we've been waiting. And so is it the ProBox product that will eventually have it?
Yes.
Yes.
So I don't want to put the cart before the horse, but if there's a way to have a temporary fix and still be successful at doing it, I think that we should try to figure that out. So
Okay.
the other question I have is, Brian, for the or Nikki, for the initiatives that were identified 2 years ago, are any of them near completion, or?
There are a number of smaller initiatives that were funded in FYE 2016 that have been completed, absolutely.
And
I
are
don't
we-
have the list.
Yeah, are we still on track with, I have an unclear picture in my head of during the budget years in the CIP and what you guys received and what has been spent on what and what we've gotten for that. It seems like, and don't get me wrong, I understand there's a lot of planning that goes into, changing over old computer software. But having said that, is there, I think before we had the report, we had a whole table of a list of things that were gonna be done and the cost of those things and what, is there an updated, something that you can physically hand us that will show us where that table is at and
Yes.
what some of the issues are with some of the things and, what the low-hanging fruit is to accomplish and what's gonna take a little bit longer and.
Well, there's 2 things that I can give you. I do have a spreadsheet basically of our 2016 funding, which lists all of the specific initiatives and gives a very detailed update on which ones are accomplished, which ones are under contract, et cetera. So I have that. And then I have what I was referring to earlier, which is the overall 6-year master plan, which now has the public safety initiatives rolled into it. That's a very large document, but certainly I could give that to you as well, yes.
Okay. Great.
I guess to your point, so it sounds like we want to start with finance. It sounds like that's the module, so we haven't purchased that. We haven't made a decision to purchase. So what do you see as a vision for when that might happen based upon their availability and what it takes to get from having them sit down and look at everything and get to a purchasing point?
Finance
guess.
continues to have challenges
Right.
with personnel and timeframes.
Are we a year out or?
I would say, in all fairness, we are also going through the transition with a new town manager.
Right.
And so, we're also trying to give John some time to, wrap his head around this project, find out where he wants to go with it. So I would say reasonably, we are probably 6 months away.
Right. Thanks.
which gets them smack dab into budget season.
Right,
Friday.
the budget.
So, and from a day-to-day IT standpoint, like, are there things that were identified a couple of years ago that really have changed? Like, you know, to your cloud-based point, is there software now that is cloud-based and the software is in the cloud and you're not, you know, loading it on each computer and the servers are just, you know, on the highway to bring the information to you and not necessarily having the software on there? Like, it seems to me like technology is changing so quickly right now that really what they might have been recommending 2 years ago would change because technology has changed.
Yeah, the first thing we moved out of the cloud was the email, the hosted email out there. That seemed to go very well. We're still in the middle of it. We are still working on that to finish it up. My system administrator, my network administrator left last week for a job out in Seattle. So I'm kind of waiting for my replacement guy to come on board to finish that up, but everybody's working good. It's only the back end, my side of the deal, that's a little bit harder to work with. The next initiative is basically backup into the cloud, looking to get off the daily tape backups we do. This would be more for mission critical items, finance. We identified a couple of them out there where if we ran into a disaster or needed a DR, we could spin them up in the cloud anywhere within the US, or actually the world. As for software, none of our application day-to-day software has been moved out there yet.
To your question though about, you know, are there things that were recommended that are now outdated? The primary focus of this master plan, especially in the first year, was to prepare our organization to change the way that we think about IT and to begin to establish best practices. And so, no, really it's more about getting our organization ready and more IT savvy, I guess is a good way to put it.
Okay.
I mean, isn't a big focus of this, to get integration too?
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, that's like I thought the biggest part of the whole.
That will pull a lot of applications together.
Right.
This project.
Have you ever, you know, I know that we met with the director of IT from this Board of Ed, right, from the schools.
Correct.
And we had some discussions there, but do you, especially with your guy who just left, do you seek help from the city or the schools or the?
It's really tough because our networks are so different. It's tough to bring a network administrator from the BOE over to help us. It's and in that meeting we had, the BOE and the town meeting, we had that one discussion over at the senior center. He agrees to me. It's hard to lend people back and forth on occasional. It's because we're so different.
Yeah.
We're like two different businesses running independently.
Anybody have any other questions? John, are you, you know, have you had time to digest the IT project at all, or?
Yeah, I need a little more time to read through everything.
All right.
I'm a little busy.
Yeah, I know. It's not criticizing. I'm just
Friday or something. But it's a priority, and I'll be getting to it soon.
All right. Well, we appreciate you guys updating. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
The last one is 2017-0193.
It is 173.
Oh, I'm sorry, 0173. Participation in joint action lawsuit against pharmaceutical companies. And John, you can give us an update on that.
Sure. Mark had brought this up at a previous meeting, that there was a notice that went out from Waterbury to other municipalities in the state asking whether we wanted to participate in a joint action, class action lawsuit over opioids and effects on municipalities. The gist is, you know, have you had any damage, have you incurred any costs due to opioids? for instance, you know, our police have had some costs. That's the type of thing that this this law firm would go after, is trying to seek recompense for those, you know, incurred costs. One of the questions that came up previously is, does Pfizer have any connection to opioids? They at least have a small connection. It's very minor, as far as we can tell. It's very minor, but they do have some involvement with opioids. I've seen some articles on it, though they seem to be following best practices. And Connecticut has laws stricter than a lot of other states on best practices for marketing and all that. So they, yeah, it seems like they are doing everything correctly. But the question was, do they have some involvement? And yes. But bottom line is, I don't see it helping anything. You know, could you eventually get a little money back, I suppose, but I don't see it solving anything. My recommendation personally is to not join into it, but.
I completely agree with the town manager.
Excellent.
I also agree. I don't want anything to do with a lawsuit.
Yep.
Dean?
Full disclosure, my wife works for Pfizer. I have talked to her about that. She said, I don't know what involvement, she personally is not involved in opioids as far as I can tell. She says, I don't know, we may have acquired something, but, you know, from Warner Lambert or from Pharmacia. But what I've been able to find out is whenever this outfit, which is done over suits, goes someplace, for example, in New York, they've rounded up about 9 New York counties to go after the pharmaceutical industry. Usually you're talking about 4 or 5 pharmaceutical firms that make, they're involved with Percocet and Oxycontin, things like that. The MO seems to be go after 5 firms, I've never seen Pfizer in the list, and then pick 4 or 5 doctors in that county or in that area that are also the culprits, as the front men for the pharmaceutical firms, and go after them. So I don't think there's any particular harm to Pfizer, but Pfizer, just to be honest, probably would take umbrage because it is part of that's its community, and there's not necessarily to do. You're right about the best practices and all that, but I don't think it's settled. If you're a member of a family who's been affected, there's probably no question in your mind that somebody's going to have to pay for this. But if you're not, you have the luxury, one could say, of thinking about it differently, which is just exactly what is the responsibility of all the players in this thing? What is the responsibility of the addict, the family, the doctors, the pharmaceutical firms, anybody else involved in this thing? I don't think that that's settled. So we've got a crisis galloping away, and we've got an industry that's fat, or said to be fat. And so it's a natural, marriage. Along comes a firm and says, all we want is a third. We just want a third. Right? But you'll notice in here, they also say, if for any reason we cut out in the middle of it and say we don't want to be involved anymore, why, we have rights in the nature of quantum merit to recover fees, costs, expenses, etc. If you stick with them through the whole process, they'll only take a third. But if you change your mind and want to get off the horse, you'll owe them for their time. So, nothing wrong with that. It's a perfectly reasonable agreement. I'm just not in any all-fired rush to join into something like this.
So it sounds like by
That was a long
consensus,
no.
we're stepping back and saying no thank you. And that's your recommendation too, John?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. Anybody else have any comments on that one?
Do we need to make a motion?
No. Oh, then we finally have a 2017-0193 hiring freeze.
Yeah.
At the meeting, last town council meeting, it was brought up the idea of a hiring freeze. I had put out just a draft version of something similar to what we had done in my previous municipality when the economic downturn hit, just as a starting point for discussion, if the council is interested in looking at that. I don't know if everyone's had a chance to look at that. One thing that has come up since then, though, that I hadn't thought about is we have 2 enterprise funds, the golf course and the wastewater treatment plant, that if you did something, maybe want to add in a sentence about those being exempt from any hiring freeze because they pay for themselves, and doesn't necessarily make sense to have them included in it. And what I'm proposing, it just is, again, the first beginning draft. And the way we did it where I came from is you have a request, well, during the time of the freeze, you have a request to fill a position. The HR director and myself would review as to the necessity of it, kind of come up with a recommendation, and then I'm proposing the mayor and myself would have to sign off on any filling, just because where I came from, it was the board chair and myself. So just kind of paralleling what we did there.
Diane?
I'm all for this, except I think it should be the town council and you to decide what options should be discussed, not just the mayor.
Bonnie?
I think this is a reasonable, but I'd kind of like to wait till we have the budget. Because we
To
don't
put in a
have any
hiring
idea.
freeze?
Huh?
No.
To implement a hiring freeze?
That's sort of the reason why
That's why we
I
need
talked
it
about
now.
it.
That's where we're having it.
And is that what you meant? I don't think that's what you meant, is it? What we're saying is we want the hiring freeze.
Yeah.
Now.
And you agree with that, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think she meant hiring anybody else until the state is set with their budget.
There are certain positions we would need to
What I
hire.
was trying to say, which I realize I'm not clear at all, it's because it's getting late, is that I don't think we should fill
That's what I thought
anybody
you meant.
until we get a budget. That you don't have discretion with our vote or you, right now, till we know what we're getting.
Some positions, though, are absolutely essential. I mean, suppose your tax collector, for instance,
Yeah.
suddenly had to leave, or chief of police, or,
We can handle
Yeah.
that individually.
Right. And to give an example, I ended up just reversing today, but the benefits coordinator was scheduled her last day to be, I think it was Thursday. She today changed her mind, she's gonna stay, but we're going to that high deductible healthcare. And if you have to have a benefits person to do that, there's certain things to operate and actually, you
Yeah,
have to
okay.
have.
All right. Like, then I guess I agree with Diane.
Greg?
Yeah, I mean, that's why we brought this up. The other thing I meant to be a part of this was some kind of discussion on like discretionary spending or until we actually get some budget from the state, because I think the governor's number was, we might get cut 14 million. We chose to look at 5 million, so
Five.
there's a pretty big gap there. Who knows what the number's gonna be, but we can't just, I think, plod along and not think about it until we actually get the number.
It's so ridiculous to be put in this position for so long. Not knowing.
Bonnie and then John.
And I agree with Greg, and kind of what the chief said tonight about that extra money, like, shouldn't that have gone back to the general fund that he had for buying whatever he was talking about?
what, the radios?
No,
What
I
extra
think he was
money?
talking about the guns. I forget what he was talking about specifically, but he said they had money left over that fiscal year, and it went to his department the following year, and that shouldn't happen, that should come to us for the budget.
It was grant money, though, for the purchase, I believe.
Yeah. Well.
I also
know.
think he sold in old equipment for the money,
Yeah,
too.
okay.
John?
Just gonna say, in terms of discretionary spending, Cindy and I have had some discussions, of looking at trainings and other things, but it's kind of hard to codify exactly what all that's gonna include. If possible, I'd like to I will enact something like that internally, that I'll come up with categories and review with them and talk with Cindy about it and come up with a plan.
Are there any big ticket items that were approved in the budget? If there were, unless they were a necessity, I would think we would just hold off. I don't know any off the top of my head. I mean, we probably have
And I'll
approved
sit
some
down with-
vehicles. We probably, I just.
Right.
think that
Anything
we-
like that, I'll sit down with Cindy, we'll come up with, she'd be better. Yeah, I'm not that familiar with the budget
Yeah.
yet, but I'll sit
Yeah.
down with her. And like I said, she's already been giving some thought to this, and we've been talking a bit about it.
Okay.
I think they already bought the broom there.
Well,
I think I've seen it, the white truck.
the existing broom barrels,
That was very expensive.
well, they're all very expensive, but state law, you gotta clean your streets.
Well, you could also contract out for that.
Exactly,
And you?
Exactly.
And you?
Hey,
Any other
Well, I
questions?
don't know.
John, do you have any questions about the,
No, if you're gonna do the resolution, I did create a version that added that sentence about the enterprise
okay. I
funds.
think we can just, okay.
But I think Diane, do we want to make it to town council? I
That's
think-
why I just pulled it as.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for the town council to make the decision, the town council have to meet
Yes, they do.
and deliberate and then vote. As opposed to delegate, I mean, the alternative is what was first proposed, just to delegate you to do that.
Yeah, when we talked about it, I told them I didn't, I wouldn't make
Because it's
that
gonna take-
assumption and that we should talk to the council. That's why it wasn't filled in, so. I'm fine either way, because,
Yeah, I'm fine either way too, I just want to put out the, the process.
I mean, I think go ahead.
My thought too was, as it is, we're gonna have them go through some extra, the department head go through some extra hoops to meet with us and really justify things, and then we'll evaluate. It's gonna, that's already gonna add probably, a couple weeks on to filling positions right there. And then, if you add in going to the cow and then depending on timing and all that, and then, even if it's, let's say it's a really needed position, that delays it quite a bit. That's the only reason I thought maybe it'd be nice to have someone designated, and that worked well where I was at, but that was my thinking.
Well, maybe we just, I don't think that, I'm not sure that we need a resolution to hire somebody. It's just more of a by
Consensus.
by consensus. So we don't, Nikki, you check, maybe that
No, I'm just listening.
No, I'm wondering if we made it that it needed to be by the general consensus of the council, we don't need to go to a cow and then go to a committee of the whole to vote it in. It would just be in the.
Consensus.
If you, sure, put it in
Yeah,
the
I think that's,
resolution that way.
that's the route we should go, and that kind of gets us at least within a 7-day period, so.
Good idea.
Everybody agree with that?
Yeah.
Well, how do you determine what the consensus is?
We're both.
You knew that was coming.
Like,
Well,
how
then,
many are in favor? I'm in favor.
well, what's the difference between a consensus and adopting the resolution? Just saying.
Well, I don't think we have to be as formal. We don't have to go to a cow with a referral and then the town council regular committee to make it permanent.
All I'm saying is, I see what you're saying. So in other words, you're saying that in any one of the 3 meetings that we have now in the month, because we're down to 3.
Yes.
Unless we have a special one, whether it's a cow or a TC, by consensus, that would be our action.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make
Or a
sure we don't.
special meeting.
I don't think we, I
I
don't
doubt
think we
we
need
need a
to
special
say,
meeting.
yeah,
I
we
think
we
3
have
meetings
several
would be plenty.
opportunities in every meeting to bring up something and
certainly.
discuss it, so.
Play it later.
Sure, you want to read this?
What is it?
It's a resolution.
Resolution about the thing we're just
Not a
talking about.
consensus.
Resolution requiring justification for filling vacant positions. Whereas the town council and representative town meeting adopted the fiscal year 2018 budget by May 25th, 2017, as required by the town charter. And whereas the state of Connecticut has yet to adopt the fiscal year 2018-2019 biennium budget for the fiscal years beginning July 1st, 2017. And whereas the various revenues from the town of Groton will receive from the state of Connecticut are unknown as the potential impact on the town's budget, and whereas the delaying the filling of the vacant positions in the town will help decrease the potential shortfall between expenses and revenues in the fiscal year 2018 budget. Now, therefore it be resolved that effective immediately, all vacant positions are frozen and may not be filled until reviewed by Human Resources for evaluation, excuse me, of pressing need and without the express written authorization of both the town manager and the town council. And be it further resolved that the resolution shall not apply to the positions falling under the enterprise funds. I'm losing my voice, including the Shinnecock Golf Course and the wastewater treatment plant, and be it further resolved that the hiring justification requirement shall continue in full force and effect until the end of the 2018-2017 or subsequent resolution. Reversing this resolution is adopted by the town council. I so move.
Second?
Motion and a second discussion on this?
I move to.
Sorry, Greg, I didn't mean to put you through all that.
That was painful.
You're making me move to amend this to strike out resolution and put in consensus of some sort. I mean, resolution would require, you're talking about formal vote and action, an adoption of, same way we're about to do this now.
Okay, so what do you want to change?
More formally, right? I'm trying to think on the fly here of what we put in here, but,
Well, why
your guys'
don't we have John change it for the regular meeting? We don't need to change it now, he can change it for,
I think we should have Greg read it again.
We want to get out of here by 10.
so what do you, where is your issue, Dean?
no, I have no issue. You guys didn't want to
just said it
have a
should say
formal
concession instead
resolution. You
of
wanted a whole consensus thing,
resolution.
something less formal. So that's why I was thinking, you have a language in here. In fact, I think somebody said, well, we'll just have it here in the resolution. We'll adopt it that way.
Would you amend it?
Which sentence?
The
Well,
concession.
the last one where it says
title?
subsequent
Not a
resolution.
resolution.
I think he would meant though no resolution for each individual job.
Right, exactly.
Right, so basically, without the express written authorization of the town manager and consensus of town council.
Right.
And then I think if you adopt this resolution, you're gonna then wanna do a resolution, unless it runs out by the fiscal
Yeah.
year, to rescind it.
That makes sense to me.
You know what? I'll withdraw this.
What he said.
All right, so you'll fix it for the,
Yeah.
And then we'll make Greg read
any
it.
other discussion? I would just say, I understand why you would withhold the wastewater treatment plant and the Shinnecock Golf Course, but, I mean, I understand like the golf course is self-funding to most years, but if you don't hire, if they are tied to that hiring freeze and there is excess, it's still all the town.
No, they're different funds. It's not a question of whether they fund themselves. They're literally not on the general fund, right?
Yeah, they're enterprise funds.
Okay.
Yeah, we're concerning ourselves with the general fund, and that's the big mystery. Those are not mysteries.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? That passes 7 to 0. Bonnie?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Oh,
The recommendations for deletion, do we have to,
Hold on.
what about recommendation for deletion?
Oh,
can we add in the joint action lawsuit then, since we're not taking any action to that?
yep.
Yeah.
And I would like to bring up, we do not have a meeting August 29th, is that correct? Because it's a fifth Tuesday?
Correct.
One next week.
Good, because I'm going to be out of town. And I will not be here on the 22nd. Okay.
Well, that's 2 weeks.
But one, you're not here either.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else have any, John, you have anything? you need?
No, we don't have a meeting next week or the week after, right?
No,
Or no,
next week we don't.
right,
The
next week,
after
then we have
do.
one out, and
And
then,
then the
yeah.
29th.
So we don't have one on the 15th?
Yes, we do.
Is he confusing me?
We have one on the 15th or we don't?
Don't do it.
Sure we do.
We don't.
That's next week, right?
Yeah.
We don't. It's the third one we've eliminated,
Oh,
the
I'm
third
sorry. I
one
thought
of
this
the
was our
month.
first, I'm sorry.
So there's none on the 15th, because that's the third Tuesday.
It's a good thing I brought it up.
We have a
Then
cow on the 22nd.
But we have a
which I
cow.
won't be
Good
at.
thing you're here.
But I won't be here on the 22nd, and you won't be here on the 22nd?
So no meeting on the 15th, meeting on the 22nd, no meeting on the 29th.
This will be a shorter meeting.
Yeah.
All right? We had a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We are adjourned.